For decades, Bournvita was more than just a healthy drink. It was a pillar of Indian childhood, trusted implicitly by millions of families. Parents believed it helped children to grow stronger, healthier, and smarter.
The brand didn't just sell chocolate milk, they sold confidence. Their tagline, Taiyari Jeet Ki, wasn't just a marketing slogan, it was a promise they reinforced through massive campaigns and ambassadors.
It took Mondelez India decades to build the unbreakable bond with consumers, with generations of mothers passing down the same brown jar. But in April 2023, that 70-year legacy of trust suddenly shattered. And this all didn't happen in a courtroom or a traditional news studio.
It started with a single 90-second video of an influencer named Revant, also known as the food farmer.
Bournvita. Many of us have been drinking this for more than 10 years, so let's review it for 1 minute. Front package. Active brain, pretty good. Strong muscles, great. The 150C, which is a caramel color which is known for causing cancer and reducing immunity. Liquid glucose, which is again sugar. Maltodextrin, which is again a fancy word for sugar. They also have emulsifier 471, which is made from glycerin to extend their shelf life. They have raising agents and artificial vanilla flavor, none of which is good for you. If you look at the ingredient label here, per 100 grams, they have 50 grams of sugar. So basically the entire half of this bag is of sugar. Taiyari Jeet Ki, but I think the tagline should be Taiyari Diabetes Ki.
He picked up the Bournvita jar, looked at the camera, and dismantled 70 years of corporate trust. He didn't just question the sugar content, he pointed out that 100 grams of powder contained 50 grams of sugar.
He went further by highlighting the use of a specific caramel color, 150C, which he claimed was a cancer-causing agent. And then he delivered the final last blow. He looked right into the lens and said the brand should have changed its famous tagline from Taiyari Jeet Ki to Taiyari Diabetes.
What made the situation explosive wasn't just the claim itself. People have been debating the sugar content in Bournvita for years now. What made it explosive was the de-influencer fact. While traditional influencers try to sell you a lifestyle, the de-influencers try to expose overpriced and ineffective products.
In an era where public authenticity is the ultimate currency, the public sided with the de-influence. Within just 48 hours, one single video crossed 12 million views and was forwarded into thousands of family groups. Panic and betrayal started brewing in the living rooms.
Overnight, millions of parents were looking at the jar in their kitchens, debating whether one of the country's most trusted brands had been misleading them all along. At this exact moment, Mondelez India stood at the critical crossroads. In business communication, success isn't just about your internal performance. It's heavily dependent on the relationship building and stakeholder management.
The public was the biggest stakeholder, and right now, the public was asking for clarity. Mondelez had a choice to step into the light, address the public's anxiety, and explain their formulation. But Mondelez India chose a different path, and instead of conversation, they chose control.
They released a statement rejecting the claims as unscientific and distorted. And then they took a step further, this by sending a strict legal notice to the influencer, demanding immediate removal of the video. That single defensive decision changed everything.
Faced with the sheer legal and financial weight of the multinational corporation, Revant deleted the video and posted an apology, stating he never intended to defame the company. But for a brief moment, the executives in the boardroom might have thought they won because the video was gone. But they failed to understand is the golden rule of the digital era. You cannot sue the internet.
Taking the video down didn't erase the truth, it amplified it. That's what we call the Streisand Effect. By trying to hide the information, Mondelez accidentally drew even more attention to it. The controversy mutated from a debate about sugar content into a massive communication crisis.
Consumers weren't just looking at the ingredients anymore. They were looking at the brand's character. They saw a powerful corporation trying to silence a lone citizen instead of answering the valid public health questions. When we look deeper into the moment, the architecture of the failure becomes incredibly clear. Providing trust wasn't entirely broken by sugar, but the silence.
In corporate environments, there is something called an applause trap, which is dangerous habit of performing a fake version of yourself just to manage how the audience perceives you. Mondelez fell straight into this trap. instead of communicating transparently to serve the consumer, they communicated defensively to protect their own image.
Their public statements heavily leaned on technical jargons, claiming their recipe was scientifically crafted. They had regulatory approvals. They argued that 7.5 gram of added sugar per serving was within limits. But parents didn't want to hear about all of their corporate sciences. They wanted to know why their kids were drinking massive amounts of sugar.
This created a total failure of emotional intelligence because during a public concern, empathy is your strongest shield. The brand needed to say, "We hear you, we understand you." But instead, they treated a highly emotional consumer panic by a pure legal threat. And because they failed to manage their stakeholder emotions, the emotions escalated legally.
The government stepped in where the National Commission of Protection Child Rights issued a formal notice to Mondelez. They gave the company 7 days to withdraw all misleading advertisements, packagings, and labels. The regulatory bodies pointed that Bournvita had bypassed the Indian nutrition rating systems.
To avoid showing high sugar content, the company used technical labels like liquid glucose, maltodextrin, instead of clearly listing them as added sugar. Under the Food Safety and Standard Authority of India, a product needs to be less than 5 grams of sugar per 100 grams of serving to claim it's low sugar, and Bournvita was light years past that. At this stage, the narrative had completely slipped out of Bournvita's hand.
What started as an Instagram reel now had evolved in a national regulatory crackdown. Looking back into the wreckage of this PR disaster, we have to ask what they could done better to save the company's 70-year legacy. When the internet turns against you, it all comes down to modern crisis communication, and historically we know what works.
Take Toyota in 2010 for an example. When they faced a massive, deadly crisis over a sudden acceleration fault, instead of attacking the press or suing the victims, Akio Toyoda, the president of the company, stood up, expressed deep personal regret, and took full responsibility for fixing the issue. Mondelez could have done the exact same.
Imagine, instead of sending a legal notice, they had invited Revant to their factory and released a video saying, "You raised a fair point." They could have admitted while Bournvita was designed decades ago, nutritional understanding have changed now, and they need to change too. They could have immediately announced the research and development of a low-sugar alternative as well.
That kind of response does three things. It kills the hostility because you cannot fight an enemy who agrees with you. It reestablishes transparency. It also proves your visibility is natural, turning a massive PR crisis into a launchpad for new product line and turning crisis into collaborations.
But that requires the brand to drop its corporate ego and step out of the applause trap, to realize that the brand is no longer what the company says it is. As Sudipta Singh, the CEO of SAS Institute of India, once said, "A brand is what customers say to each other it is." Trust is no longer a monument that you build over 70 years and leave it untouched.
Trust is a daily conversation. It is incredibly fragile. In the age of social media, a brand is only as strong as its willingness to learn, adapt, and speak the truth. Because the moment you stop answering your consumers, in the moment, someone else will answer for you.